Hello, my name is Jinmeyerson. I'm an artist based in Seoul, Korea. I am a Korean diaspora artist. I was born in Incheon in around 72. I grew up mainly in the States, in the Midwest, small town in Minnesota. And like hundreds of thousands of other Koreans from that time, I left Korea through adoption, so which is central to my work. I make paintings. I started my career in New York in the late 90s and left New York to live and work in Paris in about 2005. I spent about 4 years there, and then I've lived and worked in different parts of Asia for about the last 15 years. The idea of painting keeps evolving within the advancements of technology, with the advancements of the actual history of painting itself. When I arrived in New York in the late 90s, the mid to late 90s, painting had been declared a dead art form, or that the history of painting. When I moved to New York, there were two ideas that I had. One was how I could extend this living history of painting. I kind of refused to believe that everything had been done. And the other thing was how to share my story, which dealt a lot with identity. So if you think of the work of, say, Cindy Sherman, who I believe has a show up in Seoul now, she dresses up and pretends to be other people. I was never confident enough to be an actor within my own work. So I kind of stumbled upon very early computer graphics, randomization software. And when I started doing this in '97, most people did not like it. They thought I was cheating. They thought that painting should be something that comes directly from the artist. But if you think about painting, whether we're talking about Vermeer or Velázquez, painting has always been tied to optical perception. And optical perception has always been advanced to technology. So the idea of lenses moving to photography and then moving to CG seemed quite reasonable to me. And that's how I kind of started my career. You know, I came to America when I was about 5, you know, around 5 years old. So, and it's something like every American kid dreams of, right? It's like we all dream of having these cars, of being sports stars or what have you. So that was kind of the early work, and it was, you know, also a way of like making something that kind of made fun of the art world, you know, because it's like I had heard about other people doing sports paintings, you know, even American football paintings, but you know, to kind of question things. But as, you know, the only Korean, the only minority in my entire small town school, you know, and in fact, when I came to Minnesota, I don't think there was another Asian person within 100 miles of me, you know. So growing up in that situation, when I did it, there was some humor, and there was a bit of anger, and there was a bit of like, you know, yeah, it was really critical. So, and I love those paintings. I mean, those paintings are really allowed me to start my career. But then as I moved kind of, you know, from Paris to, and then doing a bunch of projects in Europe, the work changed. And then when I came back to Asia, the work shifted. And the large painting behind me, which is from a group of paintings that are all have the subtitle of Seance. So a seance is something, it's like a ritual that was invented by the Theosophical Society back in Europe, you know, during kind of the height of modernism. And what it was a ritual where family members led by one person would sit around a table and be able to speak to their parents or their grandparents who had passed away, who had died, you know. So when I got to Korea, I found out right away how important shamanism is here, you know. So fortune tellers, when young Koreans get married, everyone has to go see someone, and even like, you know, on a corporate level. And so that kind of story and the seance story, and finding out that I had, that all my birth records had been made up, which I kind of had believed, but it was confirmed when I went to the adoption agency. And I started thinking about my birth mother and about how I could possibly have a conversation with her, or about this monument, this kind of internal monument that I carried, with imagining having this conversation with my birth mother. So this is actually my wife and I underneath a sheet with our smartphone flashlight on. And then my oldest daughter was the photographer, and you know, everyone was complaining. No one wanted to do this, but I talked my family into doing this with me. And so they're from personal photos. And then those photos, again, were entered and scanned digitally to create something much more kind of transformative. And then eventually the painting was made. Well, I think it's a difficult question because I don't think that artists want to achieve anything necessarily. You know, when I first began to make art, I wasn't consciously aware that I was making art. And so when I came from the orphanage in Incheon to America, I only brought two things. One was the clothes that I was wearing, and the other was a love of drawing. And I don't know when I began to draw. I remember very well being at the orphanage, and I remember very well my early childhood, because that was such a violent experience to go from Korea in 1976. And remember, this is 4 years before the Gwangju uprising. Korea was a totally different place, right? And then going to the comfort of the middle of America, which at the time was, you know, like going to a different planet, you know, and not speaking the language. So drawing, which is, you know, measurement, you know, it's hand-eye coordination, it's translating what you see into what you can make. And it also became the way that I was able to acclimate or fit in to American culture. So my Swedish American grandparents would put me in the back of their car and drive me around the American countryside and point to like a tree or cow or cloud. And I love drawing so much that as soon as I would get home, I would make a drawing of the things that I had been taught. And the interesting thing about drawing, which can happen, is when you draw something, you not only understand the definition of the word, you understand what it really means. And those are two very different things, right? And I am a meaning-based artist. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's made in the name of art that lacks meaning, and it purposefully lacks meaning. You know, there's a lot of art that is worth millions and millions of US dollars that has no meaning outside of one kind of comment, right? The work that I make has come from this need to survive. You know, the work that I make is, even when I wasn't really aware of what the meaning was always meaning-based. Like, making art is a way of getting rid of something that you need to share with the world, right? And maybe that's all I will ever want to do, in some sense.